Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space. And as always, I hope that you enjoy. Story number 1. The City Must Survive, written by British Tea Company. Minus 90 degrees. The storm came at the break of dawn, driven by howling tempests and shrieking gales, descending upon the city. The normally dim day became black as night, as Mother Nature vented her wrath upon New London. Roofs creaked, windows rattled, mothers held their children close by, as prayers were uttered from pursed lips. Standing tall at the center of mankind's last bastion, the generator stood tall, billowing a defiant trail of smoke to the heavens. Its waves of heat blanketed the city, keeping it safe from the icy hell that had now befallen the entire Frostland. The cold had claimed the rest of the world, but not New London. Not today. Has everyone been issued their allotment of food and timber? The captain asked anxiously as he saw the last of the city watch returning to their homes, standing at the generator's control panel. His fingers tapped an anxious tune as his faithful assistant gave a nod, allowing himself to smile. He found it necessary to raise his voice as the gale whipped up around them. Thank God. The extra rations and wood will go a long way in keeping everyone alive and healthy. We'll see this thing through, all of us. I just got word from McLaren. The mining crews are all volunteered for extended shifts. This city will survive. Aye, aye, Captain. The city must survive, the assistant said with a nod. Even with the unfathomable cold that had now struck the city, he couldn't help but feel the few beads of sweat roll down his brow, whether it was from the soothing heat of the generator or that ambient dread which every man felt in the moments before disaster. Time would only tell. He wanted to pray to the high heaven that it was only from the first, but knew that nothing would answer. Even God had frozen by now. The two men remained at their posts, troubled only by their thoughts and the wind, feeding the temptation to remove his hood. The assistant knew better, especially seeing how the temperature could drop at any moment. Out of the corner of his eye, he spotted a figure sprinting towards them with the howling streets. It was the foreman. Claren, what's the matter? The captain asked as he stood up from the control panels and stepped over to the man, panting and wheezing. The dusty miner took a moment to compose himself, his eyes sunken, confirming the assistant's worst fears. Captain, one of the engineers spotted this just now. The cold air we're pumping into the shafts is getting so cold that the roof supports might freeze. Once that happens, we'll have a collapse. Besides the wind around them, there was only silence as the three men all glanced at each other. Finally, the captain gave a nod, keeping his fingers together, as though in prayer. The gentleman closed his eyes. Keep me informed on the situation. Tell the crews to be careful. If the situation gets worse, you send someone to me immediately. Got it. Aye, Captain. I need to tell you of our coal in storage, the captain said as he turned to his assistant. More importantly, I need the projections of how much we have in store, and if the coal mines collapse and we have a sudden reduction in output, then I must know if we have the safety net, or we must do something, extreme. Aye, Captain, it'll be done. Minus 100 degrees. Sleep had eluded the captain for the previous evening, as he spent his entire day huddled around the generator's controls. The heat had soothed his nerves. But as the engineers reported another drop in temperature, and the howling gales began to deafen him to even his own thoughts, it seemed as though even the comfort of his technological marvel would fall short. Indeed, the sight of his assistant in a mad dash towards him confirmed all of his worst fears. The supports are failing, Captain, the assistant cried through labored breaths and the storm trying its hardest to drown him out. The engineers gave it only a few of the until the total collapse. We can send people to replace the supports while the coal persists, but it's going to be dangerous work. How much coal do we have left? I need to know projections, the captain said as he barely stirred from his news, looking up at the sky. He closed his eyes and turned to his faithful right-hand man, who could only manage a small shake of his head. I'm sorry, Captain, but I didn't manage to finish in time. I only got a bit of the way through my camp before they needed my help in the infirmaries. I'm sorry, Captain. I truly am. There's nothing to apologize for, the captain said, with a close of his eyes. Several minutes passed as the winds whipped beside them, and an eternity later the gentleman finally ceased his contemplation as his throat bobbed visibly. I made a vow that I would save as many lives as possible. I place my trust in our crews and in our stores that we can see this through. Tell the men to abandon the lower levels. I won't see any more widows or orphans on our streets. Aye, Captain. I'll go get a word out immediately. Slumping down beside the control panel, the captain watched his assistant walk down the ramp. Beside him, a few workmen shoveled more coal to the generator's belly, a constant train of wheelbarrows heading towards the one thing which kept the entire city alive. Minus 110 degrees. Is everyone here? The assistant asked as he looked up the 30 or so men that had gathered around here, cold, grim, but determined. He couldn't help but let out a small sigh of relief at seeing just how many of the crew were willing to lay their lives on the line. Putting his helmet on, a man glanced around. Glarin, make a run to the captain. He'll need to know what went on down here. The foreman looked on the verge of tears as he glanced around at the workers who had offered themselves up. Everyone had volunteered, yet the decision ultimately fell on him to who amongst his faithful men would be sent to repair the supports. Looking up at the sky, he hoped God would forgive him. What do you want me to tell him? Tell him! I am sorry for disobeying him, but the city must survive. End of story. Story number 2. The Ambassadors, written by Finnegar. The alien ambassador turned to his counterpart and growled, Why have you brought me here? The human ambassador waited another few moments for the herd of aides and bodyguards to move away. He knew the outcome of this conversation could determine the fate of his world. Do you know where we are, High Elder? The alien's eyes narrowed. I have studied your maps, he replied. We are in your province of Europe, but I asked you why. You are correct, of course, if rather unspecific. We are just outside Sessanferrato, Italy, and so far from why, a battle was fought here. Ah, one of your recent anti-unification skirmishes, the Elder chuckled. Even if you had time to create a world government before we found you, it still wouldn't have saved you from our invasion. Recent? No, this battle took place 2,500 years ago. And as for the invasion, I wanted to ask you about the propaganda you've been spreading. Do you really mean it? Of course, roared the Elder. We have no need to exaggerate or lie. Subjugating your world would take 30,000 troops, no more. Our technology gives us an insurmountable advantage. The human took a breath. It is interesting you mentioned 30,000, High Elder, as that is the number that died during the battle that was fought here. The Elder paused for a moment. The war that was fought here, you mean? No, Elder. Let me be clear. 30,000 men died here, in a single day, during the Battle of Sentinum. Are you trying to scare me, human, by telling me tales of one of Earth's most bloody historical conflicts? This battle isn't famous, Elder, but few historians who specialized in the period will have ever heard of it. The recent human history you've mentioned, the only kind that your people have bothered to review, is the most peaceful period on record. I'll leave you with one final thought before we return to the negotiating table. Do you know how this human commander here won the battle? The alien stared. I'll answer for you, the human continued. The general intentionally sacrificed himself to rally his troops. They were so inspired by his death that the enemy was quickly routed. I don't believe you, the alien responded. Go look it up, Elder. It's all there. The story of this battle and all the others. We may be peaceful people now, but our history is written in blood. Know this and take the message back to your leaders. Using the technology and tactics of 125 generations past, human suicidal bravery led to the death you find unfathomable in just a single forgotten battle. Try to imagine what we could do today. You may eventually take our world, but we will fight you the entire way, and I can guarantee that it will take you much, much more and 30,000 to do it. End of story. The algorithm reckons you should be watching this video next, and I recommend that you should be always watching my video. So, click with energy! And yes, clicking that does help the channel. Thank you very much. I just quickly want to thank the Tier 5 patrons and channel members: Alithia Barkey, Cam Maxwell, Casper Arnholtz, Albarden Guster, Arcadian, Lord Azrakal, and Joachim Backer.